Welcome to our Blockchain Center of Excellence Women in Blockchain Initiative Spotlight video. Today we have Dr. Denise McCurdy, and she is here to share with us a little bit about her experience and journey becoming a leader in this blockchain space. So welcome. Good morning, Denise.
Thank you. I'm very delighted and honored to be here. Thank you for having me.
Now, if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about your current position and where you're working and maybe something passionate outside of work. Tell us a little bit about you as a person.
Okay. So a little bit about me as a person. I am the managing director of my own boutique consulting company called Gate Consulting. I'm also a research associate with the Georgia State University Center for Engaged Business Research. In my role, I do different consulting gigs, if you will, for companies who wish to deploy blockchain. Of course, blockchain requires companies to work together. And so I've been just finished up a opportunity with DFM Data, which required me to create a blockchain framework for them. And what am I passionate about outside of work and all things blockchain and supply chain, which is in fact my passion? I love to garden. I'm a huge gardener. I'm not necessarily a good one, but it's just my happy space when I go out in my garden and work. It's my form of meditation.
Same. I call it my therapy. I love that. And that's wonderful that that's the key, that you are passionate about your topic, whether it's work or not. That's the best case scenario. It's not work if you love it. So thank you for sharing that. You have an extensive background, not only as a uh, significant business and technology leader and businesswoman, but how did you get interested in blockchain from a CPG background?
Great question. So how I actually got into blockchain was, as you said, I had been in business for 35 years in the technology space. And I started when there were, frankly, very few women in the technology space at that point in time. About 5 or 6 years ago, I was ready for a shift in my career because I had been doing, technology for a long time. And I was looking at things that really interested me because I wanted to be passionate about it. And I was talking to a colleague and I said, I'm looking at a couple different things. And he said, have you heard about blockchain? And at that point I said, what chain? What the heck is that? So I did a little investigation and I thought, I think there's something to this. I think blockchain and supply chains in particular, I think this thing has legs. So I again shifted which some people thought I was crazy, like, why are you leaving the world of business? I said, I just feel that this is my next chapter. Went back to school, got my doctorate in business, and did my research and my thesis in blockchain supply chain. And because my background is in big business, how businesses need to work together.
That's incredible. And that you had that drive to go and do something as challenging as get a PhD and in something as forward thinking as blockchain. I think that shows you had a lot of insight early on before many saw the value in the connections between supply chains and blockchain. So that's really incredible. How has working in blockchain governance and working with all types of companies really in the blockchain space been different, or has it not been different from your traditional career path or work in technology and CPG? Has been blockchain been any different?
That's a really good question. So to answer the question, I do believe that blockchain is different. The technology itself is actually pretty straightforward. But what's different about blockchain is the fact that companies have to work much more closely together than they have had to in the past. And even with things like other technology, EDI, and I've worked a lot certainly in CPG, there's a lot of extensive supplier relationships, but they're still able to be a bit at arm's length. You can't do that with blockchain, or you don't need blockchain, right? And so how it's different is it requires different ways of working, different processes. It involves this co-collaboration that, again, is new to companies, and big and small. The research that I did for my doctorate was partly was building a proof of concept or an artifact in a blockchain lab. But then I went and talked to 20 supply chain logistics experts, big and small companies, some really big ones and some small ones. And they represented air, rail, freight, health, a variety of industries. And the common theme that kept coming up was, we think blockchain is foundational. We think we're all going to be using it. We don't know exactly how to use it to work together, not the technology itself, but it's the working together. And that's sort of how I landed. It's not where I started. I was starting in a different, but when you got to follow the data, right? And that's the space I landed in. And I was so fortunate to run across Dr. Lassity's work. I was like, oh, great. She's paving the way for me here.
That's excellent. Thank you for sharing that. And we talked a lot about who you have been working with. Let's talk about what now. Now, I want to hear more about your projects that you've been involved in, whether that's the being in the role of VP of blockchain governance or any other interesting projects that or initiatives that you've worked on regarding blockchains.
Again, a good question. And so the projects I've been involved in with governance and blockchain governance specifically actually draws on a lot of regular and corporate business problems. So blockchain is not necessarily new in its requirement to break through some barriers. It's the extent of the barriers that we have to break through that makes blockchain, I think, quite novel. But some of the projects that I've been working with, again, are with supply chain logistics, because that's my happy space other than in my garden. And it is helping companies come up with steering committees, working groups, working group charters. What does good look like? There's some technological rules that came out of my research that good collaborations look like. And what we did was we followed some of these tech rules to say, okay, guys, we're going to sit down, we're going to have these conversations. And whether you're in logistics or you're in, health supply or whatever the industry is, there actually are common themes of what good looks like. And I've been able to apply and reapply some of those common themes. Does that help? Does that answer the question?
Absolutely. So in the same way you mentioned Dr. Lassity, that's paving the way for so many industries and leaders of business to really see what is the correct, proven elements in this governance thing that actually can help their project take off. So that's really great that you're helping kind of set those standards for what does and doesn't work in these ecosystems. That's pretty incredible. Thank you. Uh, Next, I want to know more about what challenges have you experienced in maybe your career or in blockchains, studying that and trying to help implement these types of technologies.
Another good question. So the challenges that I've encountered are, again, the challenges that one tends to encounter. So collaboration and governance is, again, not a new topic. We've had to collaborate to share rivers or community hospitals or other things. We're just now applying those principles to governance. In fact, some of my work actually used some peer review research in what does good collaborative governance look like. And some of those challenges are what they are in the old blockchain world. And it's a big one is the legal frameworks. We think that the legal frameworks aren't anywhere close to where the technology is. So where does my business end now and where does yours begin? What happens if I am liable for something and you knew about it because it's on the blockchain? So you actually have access to the information. Does that make you liable too? How do I know you're going to secure the data the way I have to at my company, but perhaps you don't have to? Maybe I'm HIPAA and maybe you're GDPR and I'm using different regulatory terms for security, data security, or you're the Food Safety Modernization Act, FDA. So there's these different regulatory guidelines that are still evolving. And the challenges are, so where does my firm and my liability end now that so much is publicly available? And firms are really grappling with this to the point where they're going, legal, too hard. Maybe I just need to take a step back until this gets figured out. So I would say that the legal and regulatory evolving guidelines is probably one of the biggest challenges, because no one wants to be in a position of getting sued.
I completely agree that maturity of our regulation around things like digital ownership and data has just not quite evolved to that point where it makes it clear. So lots of gray areas there. Now that we've mentioned challenges, I want to hear your wins. What are some big milestones that you've been able to achieve and maybe some of these projects involving blockchain enabled solutions?
Being able to draw on research, again, good research, and I'm standing definitely on the shoulders of people, and still continue to do so, but being able to um, complete and draft and implement a governance framework that is suitable for that particular ecosystem. And everyone is a little different, because you have to include those principles that we talked about earlier, right? We have to include the things like the incentives that work for a particular partner. There has to be what I call the with them, what's in it for me, for everyone sitting around the table. So there's a number of things that have to be considered, and it feels really good when we've launched a governance framework that everyone around the table feels good about. Because if they don't feel good about it, it's not going anywhere. It's dead on arrival. People have to feel good and comfortable. They have to feel safe. And getting to that point with some of the consortiums that I've worked with, again, it's it's a great feeling.
Yeah, blockchains are so reliant on incentive, and to be able to meet those needs for everyone at the table, that's a huge accomplishment because it's so complex and sophisticated to get everything just right, in regards to, meeting those needs and protecting people at the same time. So that's really great. Thank you. My last question, and this could be, a business mentor, someone you've never met, you're just inspired by their work, or maybe it's a, family member or friend, but I want to know who or what inspires you and why.
Uh, Another great question. So I look for inspiration for people who think differently from me. And to do that, I have to go outside my comfort zone and seek out those people, and I do that. I also am hugely inspired by, and I'm not saying this because this is University of Arkansas, but by Dr. Lassity's work, by Dr. Roman Beck's work, and the folks who have done some of this really heavy lifting in this space. But then I also like to talk to students who are just starting out. It's a key part of my job, and I love it. I work with the Women Lead program at Georgia State University, and helping women get into the STEM and watching them achieve some liftoff is something that I find inspiring every single time I have a conversation. So, uh, it's a dual answer of where I find inspiration. So some of it is certainly in the thought leaders, but it's also in the up and coming, and they will be the up and coming thought leaders.
That's incredible because I think it goes both ways. By participating in things like these interviews and sharing your work and your experience and what you've been able to accomplish in the space of blockchains and business, I think you will be an inspiration to our students seeing this. So thank you so much. It was an honor to have you on here today. And any final thoughts or maybe advice you'd have for women in college right now seeking an education in these areas?
I do actually. I would say get engaged, be involved. If you see someone on LinkedIn or you run across a profile, reach out to them, email them. They may not respond, but they probably will. And just have a conversation. So I've had some students say, "Well, I know you're busy and whatever." I go, "No, I reach out." So I would say just make a point to reach out to a couple of people a week and start building your connection. You're going to learn so much. And the people that you're reaching out to, they like it too.
Just saying, thank you so much, Denise. We appreciate you being here today.
Oh, my pleasure. Anytime. Thank you so much and have a fabulous weekend.
You too.
Thanks. Take care.